Hello, history friends, and welcome back. It is March 1st. I am not sure if you did this in elementary school, but I totally remember this, this whole concept of keeping track of March, whether it is a lion or a lamb. I'm not sure what you would classify today. It seemed pretty nice this morning. Maybe a little foggy, but it's supposed to be pretty bad tonight, so I'm not sure what we'd classify today as. Okay, so I thought I'd do a little video to kind of help you guys. It'll probably be in a couple parts because I only get 15 minutes for this, and I have this habit of talking, so I'll try to do my best. So today we're going to start out with kind of an activity here to help with shutting off your stress hormone, particularly during a pandemic or stressful times such as online learning. Your stress hormone doesn't shut off itself, and so we need to learn how to help it do that. And so one of the things that I thought I'd share is this EFT, which is an emotional freedom technique. And there's a whole ton of science around using your own hands to focus your body, focus your energy, and then reframing your positive self-talk. And this is super important. Our brain is a very, very powerful being that we don't even understand fully, but one of the things we do know is that how we think influences everything. So check that out. There's an intro video, and then there's one that I did with you to kind of walk you through an example. Feel free to use it anytime. Don't, but I do highly recommend that you try it. Okay, so for today, we are going to do Start Unit 2, Activity 1, the causes of the Great Depression, and Activity 2, responses of the Great Depression. There are pieces in each of them that I want you to do today. So if we, you each have your own organizer, but if we go to the master organizer, it will show you this is all Unit 1 stuff. Okay, and so for today, Monday, March 1st, Unit 2, we're going to start Activity 1. There is one activity for you to complete with the class, and then you'll be working on your course culminating, and I'll talk about them when they come up. Unit culminating, a task together, and then a course culminating for today. Again, I will talk about them as they come up, but this is a place that you can check to see if you have done all your work for the day. So let's go to Activity 1. So I click on it and it takes me to the content. It has an overview of what we're going to be doing today and kind of the tasks of what we're going to discuss. So let's dive right into the content. I'm going to make it bigger. There we go. All right, so this activity we're focusing on the economic cycle in the 1920s and the stock market crash. So there is that whole concept of significance. Why are these things important? Well, it's set forth a huge chain of events. It is a massive lesson that we should have learned in history about the dependency that we have on certain things, and Canada certainly has learned from this one. Particularly our economic focus. Sometimes we fall back into old habits, but a lot of the time we are learning to spread ourselves out so we're not so dependent. Okay, so we'll talk more about that. Proud of Canada. So this is your course culminating activity. And if you missed it in Unit 1, that's fine. Let's just move on and do it in Unit 2. So I created a Google Doc for you that I shared. And it's still there. And I moved the Unit 2 stuff to the top of the chart, so don't worry, it's really easy to find. So if you go into your Google Drive and you look for the shared with you, and you type in proud in the search bar, you're going to get something that says your name in front of this and then proud of Canada, and it looks like this. And so we were supposed to set some criteria of what it means to be proud of a country, or some people have asked for an alteration so they know what their alterations are. But 3 things that would make you proud of a country. And then each time I ask you to come here, it's going to be titled. So activity 1 is the causes of the Great Depression. And you're going to make some point form notes. And it doesn't have to be both, because maybe all of the things from this activity makes you ashamed of what Canada did. You don't have to try to balance it in any way. So think of some things that you found in this unit, and then determine, do they make you proud or do they make you ashamed, and kind of put some point form notes down in there. So that we'll be talking about more often and later on. Okay, so the first little activity talks about listening to this video. I'm not going to play the video for you because that would be a long time. And I don't really know what the sound is like. But you can pause my video and go listen to this video and then come back. But essentially, this is a song from the time, and we're trying to think about what it means about living in the 30s. So right off the bat, the first picture is, and these are primary resources. So any of the pictures that are found in this video are primary resources because they are using photos from that time. I think there's even a part where they use a video from that time, so that also counts as a primary source. And then because this was written in the 30s, about the 30s, we would call this song also a primary source. So if you're having trouble figuring out your primary, secondary, there's some more examples. Okay, so looking at these lyrics, it's the words that they're talking about. They used to tell me I was building a dream, and so I followed the mob. And this is essentially like the start of consumerism, if I can talk about the angry beast that is consumerism. So they were saying that you can live a better life, you can have it all, you can do things that you wanted, you can have the stuff that you wanted. And so everyone, hence the mob, everyone went out and bought the products and spent the money and borrowed the money and bought into the stock market and bought their cars and bought the appliances for their houses and spent their monies on trips and bought, did I say buy cars? I don't know. Anyways, spent their money out in coffee shops or ice cream shops, or they went to speakeasies or whatever. So everyone kind of followed this same trend. Where there was earth to plow or guns to bear, I was always there right on the job. So whatever the group kind of said we needed to do, if we're going to be farmers or if we're going to go to war, I was going to do what everyone else told me. They used to tell me I was building a dream with peace and glory ahead. So that's kind of a reference to like World War I and coming out of World War I, that everything that you were doing was for peace and glory. Why should I be standing in line just waiting for bread? So this is reference to people waiting in line for food. So once the Depression hit, they didn't have money for food and they often had to wait in line. We didn't have any social programming at this time. That was brand new and comes out of this area, so we'll talk about that. But they were all dependent on donations, particularly from church groups. Once I built a railroad, I made it run, made it race against time. So they're talking about how prior to this, they were very prosperous by building the railroad. Once I built a railroad, now it's done. That job is over. So the railroad's done, they don't need all those people. And remember, they brought in all those people from Europe, they brought in all those Asian workers, and then once the railroad was done, they just left them. So all these people had nothing and they had to figure it out. So then World War I happened and they've got this job, now they're soldiers, but now World War I is over and they're brought home, and now they are kind of competing for what jobs are out there. Okay, and then we'll talk about why there's an even more decrease in jobs. Brother, can you spare a dime? So now they are begging for money, which was very shameful at this time. I wouldn't say now asking for help is shameful. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying that during this time in the 30s, you were not seen as a man if you couldn't provide for your family or for yourself. Asking for money was like the worst thing that you could do. Asking for help, you were just not working hard enough. And we know that is not true. This was a very common misconception at this time that if you asked for money, it was because you weren't working hard enough. If you didn't have something, it's because you didn't do something. And we know that's not true. The economic cycle is definitely against a large majority of our population, and our population struggles because of it. Once I built a tower, up the sun, brick and rivet and lime. Once I built a tower, now it's done. So again, I've got this job, I do it for you, everything's glorious, now it's done, now I need that money. So have a chance to watch that video. Then we're talking about cause and consequence. So why something happened, and then what the implications of that happening is. So we can talk about some underlying causes, while there's also some immediate causes. And one of the first things that they ask us to look at is this photo. And at first glance, you may not really recognize it, but it is horses pulling a car. So this is because all these people bought vehicles, but after the Depression, they couldn't manage to afford gas, and gas was rationed, or it was super expensive, and so they actually couldn't even afford the gas for their vehicles. But they could potentially afford a horse. So the car became their new wagon, which is a very expensive wagon, probably a little silly at this time. And it's asked you some questions. What do you observe in this photo? What are some reasons that this would occur? What questions do you have about this time period? And what caption would you give this photo? Notice where they are. There's no particularly nice road. There's lots of people in the background. So it could be quite possible that these two are riding, but there's also lots of people walking the road again. So we've kind of had a reversion back. We went forward with all this tech, but then because of our economic crisis, we went back to old methods. So the 1930s are often referred to as the Great Depression. And why do you think a depression could be called great? And my little link here is broken, but describing what a depression is. And this will help us, this lovely little economic cycle here. So economy has its ups and downs, and it's very, very common. But how high and how low it goes, and again, it'll change from person to person. But prosperity is when you have a low unemployment rate, salaries are high, and business is good. Okay, and people knew this more recently before the 80s. So just before the 80s, salaries were high, there was a low unemployment rate, business was great, you could jump from job to job that you wanted. Like, you basically got to pick where you wanted to work. And then we can fall into a recession, and lots of people confuse a recession with a depression. A depression is much more severe. A recession is where you just have a natural back cycle. So things have to go up and down, and a recession would be just the natural down. So unemployment rates rise a little bit, salaries are lowered, and some businesses may close, and you will have that natural rate. When it's particularly bad, we go into a depression where unemployment rate is very high, like 25% of the population or more. Salaries are very low, or people work multiple jobs, and there's a high rate of bankruptcy. And then we fall into this recovery phase, so jobs are starting to create, salaries increase, and businesses open. And we will talk about the effect of this how our economy goes through these stages in the next video.